I think that one of the silver linings of this terrible fire that we had here was I think it did wake up a lot of people. And I was certainly one of them because I was one of the early areas to get hit. My farm was consumed with fire. So I was one of the first ones because it really got raging in beginning of 2019.
Following is a conversation with Rachel Ward, English-Australian actress, film director, screenwriter, and now cattle farmer, where I spoke to her from her farm in Eastern Australia. Hi, Rachel. Thank you. I really enjoyed the teaser of the film to Standing on the Soilution. It's really cool that you are one of the stewards of the topic.
I'm an example of someone who's having a go, who's gone, I cannot sit on the fence any longer. We must jump in. We must, sustainability is not enough. We have to start regenerating. We have to start phasing out plastics, chemicals, whatever. And we have to get so serious about this subject. One of the things they say about regenerative farming is that you have to change the paddock between your ears. So it's and that's a really hard thing to do. How do you not increase consumption? How do you move forward without consuming? How does anybody progress in an area where they necessarily have to consume for their jobs? I mean, I'm just setting up an Airbnb and I have to get things for that place, and it's a toss up between, do I make this work or how do I do it so that I don't use more plastic, buy more mattresses, whatever. So it's a constant balancing act, isn't it? Anyway, I digress. Get me back.
That was a very good digress because it was actually deep into the heart of the matter, of the big picture of our existence on this planet. And it was easy. Not that life is ever easy per se, but we didn't really have to worry about microplastics in the oceans or 90% of the sharks being hunted out of the oceans, which is just an indication of all the fish being fished out of the oceans, of all the rainforest being burned down to make room for cattle for 99-cent hamburgers at McDonald's. And it mattered in a way, but it was off the radar. And suddenly we're starting to get these warning signs, these dire warning signs. And it's time on an individual level and even on the smaller level to make changes. And you have been farming for decades, I believe, and something made you shift. What was your moment or epiphany, if you will, that said, "Oh my gosh, we can't keep doing this the way we used to"?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Your little wake-ups that you have. I mean, of course, there was so many things that were shaking me and waking me and perturbing me and actually sort of leading me to an existential crisis, which I basically had a sort of major meltdown after the fires in Australia. And, I think that one of the silver linings of this terrible fire that we had here was I think it did wake up a lot of people. And I was certainly one of them because I was one of the early areas to get hit. And my farm was consumed with fire. So I was one of the first ones because it really got raging in beginning of 2019. So when they hit here, I was sort of just curious. I was just, I was coming back from the beach and I suddenly saw this, this sort of extraordinary black cloud over the horizon. And I was basically going for a sticky beak, just very quite close to me. And I just went, oh, there's a terrible fire over there. Maybe a tank has exploded or something like that. Anyway, of course, as I got closer and closer, it became evident that the whole mountain was on fire. And there were sort of people racing around and there was this sort of very eerie wind that was blowing and this sort of incredible sort of silence of no birds. All the birds had gone, but you just saw this apocalyptic scene of the fire approaching. And I still was, I was about 5 kilometers away, and I went, oh, it'll burn itself out here. And as I was returning, I kept seeing the fire bombs, the fire sends out these sort of, they're sort of fireballs, they call them. And a fireball hit my back road as I was going home. And I saw it catch fire, and I raced back to the fireys who were on the road, basically ushering people out of the area. And I raced up and said, the road to Taylor's Arm is now on fire. And they said, madam, there is nothing we can do about it. Just get out of the way. And, as I went up that road, back up that road, it had already moved so far ahead that there were people on the road with sort of tragic little hoses that they were sort of trying to put out the fires that had leapt across the road. And you just saw the futility of their efforts as the fire just took hold. And I came racing back to my farm, and I basically got my pathetic little hose, and I watered all the gutters. I wet all the gutters. I put the hose up on the roof. I put the sprinklers on the lawn. But again, mine was sort of pathetically futile, really, to what was coming. And yes, I saw it suddenly. I saw it raging now behind the farm, and these flickers of red, but just this sort of powerful smoke, this extraordinary churning blackness of this smoke. And I rang my husband, and I said, who was in Sydney, and I said, I don't think we'll have a farm by the morning. And I mean, he just said, get out of there, get out of there. And so that's what I did, is I wet everything I could. And then I didn't even take anything, because I couldn't begin to sort of go, what is more precious than anything else?
Honestly, I can't even imagine. It sounds like a complete nightmare.
It was like hell. It was like you'd gone down into some hellish place, and you just felt, it was very shocking. It was shocking for the damage it had done. It was shocking for the trees. I mean, I went for a walk around the perimeter of the property, and I could hear in the forest just this crash, 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 as the trees that had been burnt over the last few days just gave up and fell. And just the smoldering that was continuing. And you just, again, this silence, apart from the crashing of the trees, there was just nothing there. It was eerie. It was like the end of the world. What can you say? So if you're not moved by that to do something, what the hell are you moved by?
Yeah.
So it was really after that, and it was really after having grandchildren, my first grandchild, actually, that I just woke up to, what the hell can we do more? And the miracle was that actually I could do a lot.
It sounds like that view into Armageddon really woke you up. I can't even imagine. But then after the fires dwindled down and went away, it sounds like you did a deeper dive into looking at what the use of chemicals for farming was doing, not only to the topsoil, but the long-term effects on human health. Because the introduction of so many chemicals and pesticides over the decades and decades of modern farming has really gotten into everything. So is that right?
They call it novel entities, which is really chemical pollution. And we now have 350,000 different chemicals in our world to use. And we have the plastic production has increased by 79% since they started doing that. Started itemizing, started recording what the changes there were, the planetary boundaries. So it's just not good enough. Sustainability is no longer good enough. We need regenerative practices. And if we keep on crossing those boundaries, we are so much on a route to self-termination. It's how many times can we be told that? How much more evidence do we need? How many more people that are doing these recordings of data? How much more do we need to recognize this? There you go. There's my spiel, and that's why my husband would have moved to another room about 20 minutes ago by now, and I'm sure your listeners are doing that too.
You spared him. Did you say, why don't you go take a walk right now because I'm about to go off?
Look, he's not here. He's actually not here, but and he's very much a city fella. So it was really me and my farm manager.
Wow.
And I credit him with coming to me and saying, I really want to try this thing. It's not what he said. It's not working. The way we're farming is not working. Inputs are too high. And, we are completely at the mercy of these huge degrees of change, whether it be drought or floods, which we have constantly, drought, flood, flood. And we just can't keep up with the extremes of climate and the expense of the inputs and because food is so low, the price of food is too low. We are just spending on too much stuff and not spending on the right kind of food and not encouraging the right kind of food.
You're listening to my interview with Rachel Ward, English, Australian, multiple Golden Globe nominated actress, film director, screenwriter, and now cattle farmer. We're talking about a recent epiphany after the Australian bushfires of 2019 to switch her farm to a regenerative farm.
We can do it. We can do it. It just somehow needs people, I think that's why regenerative farming is so exciting, because it's very hopeful and it's very doable and people are getting on board and it's not hard and it's fabulous to do it. It's a great experience to start working with nature and walking side by side with nature. And there is answers to every problem. At the moment, we have so much rain here. We've had a summer of unrelenting rain and floods, and the grass is way over my head. Wow. We have this grass called Soteria, and it's a really quick growing grass, and it grows to seed very quickly. So, so our fences and we have now electric fences, and we have now moved from 30 paddocks to 90 paddocks. So you can imagine how many little electric fences we have, and we have to slash all the fences because electricity doesn't work unless you have the wet grass grounds the electricity. So most people would be just spraying chemicals under those fences, and just dealing with it, and you deal with it at the beginning of summer and everything dies under the fence and job done. But what are you doing? What are you doing underneath those fences? What are you killing? What habit are you perpetuating? If you could use a chemical there, are you going to use a chemical? I mean, like my next door farmer, my ex farm manager, sprays out his field with glyphosate before he plants seed. Before he direct drills seed in, but he completely annihilates his fields before he does so. Gosh. And he grows this grass, monoculture grasses, and he has fat cattle and he sells fat cattle, but he will go under because of the amount that he spends getting those cattle fat. Wow. So he sprays, he plants, he sprays with water. He has to irrigate his fields as well to get it to grow. And, yes, he goes to the cattle yards and people pat him on the back, the size of his cows and the amount of money he gets for his cows. But it isn't the way forward. It's leading to a dead end. My cattle may not be as, ridiculously fat as their cattle, but they don't need to be, they don't need to be. And, we've got a very distorted view now, I think, of how big, how fat, how everything needs to be. No, cattle don't need to be that big to have a great taste of your cattle on grass-fed finished cattle. You don't need to have these monster cows that are stuffed with grain in feedlots.
With chemicals on those grains.
Do it with nature, just what nature provides.
Yeah.
So,
Go
ask me,
ahead.
now you do some talking.
Well, it's a conscious decision, and it's easier to not do anything. You had sent me into this realm. You said, look up this person and that person, and here's a couple of individuals to research before you speak with me. And I looked them all up, and I spent hours and hours watching videos. Oh my gosh! So you said one guy to look up is Charles Massey, and he talks about regenerative
agriculture.
I actually get goosebumps when you say his name. When you say his name, I actually have a physical reaction. Isn't that bizarre? Because I think he's, you know, and people like him are just offering so much hope. They are the heroes of today, and they are individuals. They're so brave because they started a long time ago, and they started without any precedent, really. And they just recognized what was going. They're smart guys, and they were smart farmers, and they recognized what was happening, and they heard whispers of this other way of farming because it's been going on now for 40-50 years. You know, people have been doing it. Alan Savory started it a long time in Zimbabwe, and you know, so they're, what do they call, the early adopters, they call them. And they are just doing it without any without any blueprints at all. They are just, you know, having a go, failing, having another go, failing, and finally getting to a point where this works. You know, I am up and running just without inputs and working with nature. And there, I mean, his book, Call of the Reed Warbler, was one of those books. I never had a teacher that changed my life, and I hadn't really ever read a book that changed my life, but this book changed my life. I read it, I could not put it down, and I just read it with such hopefulness because he was so smart, and he was answering all the psychological issues too that were blocking people from going this way. You know, he talked about humanity and our resistance to change. And he talked about the kind of people that were more open to change than others. And he put that in a historical context, so you could see how change had happened throughout the world towards, you know, obviously a civilizing society. And you could see that it was always the early adopters that made the changes that have, well, you know, it's very hard to say that have brought us to this civilized point now, because obviously it's a deeply uncivilized position now that we're at, because we're destroying ourselves. It's very hard. You know, we have a culture of in Australia of our wealth has come from the sheep's back. So our wealth has been established even before mining with the farmer. The farmer brought us riches here. You know, the farmers developed this country. So, you know, they are like those sacrosanct people that you cannot criticize. You know, I mean, luckily my farm manager woke me up, younger than me. He was reading, you know, his influences were different. He was on the land. He was looking for answers. He realized that it wasn't viable. Anything was viable. And he said, I'm going to change my practice to regenerative practices. Do you want to come with me?
Wow.
So we joined our herds, and we are now farming together. And we are now doing what's called cell grazing, which is you break up your paddocks into smaller entities, and you move your cattle around like a wild herd, like a wild herd would move. So you have much denser herds. So our cattle move daily. In the summertime, sometimes they move twice daily, but it's easy peasy. It's just a question of opening a gate. So it's, you know, and some people that doesn't suit them, but does it really suit them going, you know, plowing their fields, spraying their fields out? We don't have to do any of that. In the end, we want to be lazy farmers. We are aiming towards being lazy farmers and letting the sunlight and the cattle do everything, nature do everything for us.
So, Rachel, for the benefit of the listener, the idea of moving a herd from cell to cell or paddock to paddock, it allows the grass to fully regrow, right? Before moving the cattle back into that area again, where they're, of course, going to eat all that fresh grass.
In fully growing, it is using the photosynthesis to pull our excess carbon out of the atmosphere and back down into the ground. And this is what we've lost, of course, by our huge soil losses and degeneration. is our soil has blown away. I've built carbon in my soil. Building carbon in your soil allows you to hold water in the soil, and of course brings down, encourages nutrients and all the nutrients actually that are in the atmosphere that actually then come down, all the minerals that come down into the soil through photosynthesis. And that whole very simple process, the photosynthesis sends sugars down, and then the microbes in the soil turns the sugars into carbon.
Wow.
I think I've definitely missed some scientific link there, but essentially that's what happens.
Wow.
So it's a win-win-win all round. But it
good.
is hard to change. It's hard to get your head around. It's hard to take that first step. I mean, as a woman, and in this world, I've had to change careers 4 times now. And it's hard to suddenly go, okay, I've left that behind. I'm going to have to step out, and I'm going to have to change everything. I'm going to have to re-educate myself and start again. But that when it's as urgent as it is, we have to.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah, Rachel.
So, I mean, a lot of people, I was born in 1961. I love to work, and there's something that was born into me. I don't know if my mom or dad had it in their genes or something, but I just can't see letting time go by without pursuing something I'm passionate about. And you've had a successful careers and now in this farming genre and melding together the documentary realm, which is really exciting. You have every right to relax right now, and you are on full tilt. And this is beautiful. And this is what gives people like me a lot of hope and belief that there is a reason to be confident and positive about good change happening, because people like you are out there going, you know what? No, I'm not going to just sit by and hope somebody else does it. You're doing it. And was it born into you? Was it your mom, your dad, a grandparent? Like who inspired you?
I'm lucky that I actually was able to become empowered to do something because I had a farm. I had a farm, and that was all set in motion, I think, by making the Thornbirds all those years ago. I sort of fell in love with, I did grow up on a farm, so I had it in me. I grew up in the country, and although my father didn't actually farm, I was surrounded by other farmers, and we were in cropping and sheep country. And but then I moved away from that as soon as I could. It was a sort of like that youthful thing, that rush to the city to, you wanted to be with a lot of other people. You want to, you don't want to feel like you're stuck on a farm. And
now look at you.
If only I'd known, I would have stayed there.
So what can people actually do? It seems like a huge problem. And how can one individual actually affect some element of change?
But everybody buys food, and that is the most empowering thing you can do. If you are more conscious about what food you buy and where it's come from, that is where the big change will happen. We also have a paddock to plate business that I do with my daughter. So we are now bypassing retailers who are not moving fast enough and who are not on this regen bandwagon, have not understood that it's not enough to be organic, sustainable. We need to be regenerating. So we are now offering regenerative meat directly to customers. The more that customers demand it, the more it will happen. Retailers are just responding to demand. So the more we make a fuss about when we go into a restaurant and we say, excuse me, is that a happy pig? Does that come from industrial farms? Or is that bacon from a natural farm? Is that grown outside? Is it healthy? Or is it grown in a concrete block with thousands of other pig held in birthing cages? It's the best. It's the most powerful thing you can do is to change farmers, is to change the way we farm and to change the way we eat, and to demand that our food is not full of chemicals. Until more and more people go, that's enough. I have to write, I have to march, I have to shake it up.
Rachel, that's incredible. I'm inspired, and the best part of this story, if you could sum it up, is it's there's a tragedy that's unfolding, but there's a lot of hope, and you ended this and moved it into this direction of hopefulness and possibilities, and I would imagine that in that on its own is would I be making an assumption to say that that's what inspires you and gets you out of bed in the morning, that you're making a difference? Is it listening to other people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's purpose. And, I'm 64. I thought, my life would be, I was scared of it winding down because I don't feel like it should be winding down. So to find something that I can be so actively engaged in and move out of the film industry, which was the most, incredibly frustrating place to be. So, that's fabulous, but it's also, it's inhabited by this whole world, and people who are onto this are so inspired themselves, and it is a community of people of like-minded people who are actually getting out there and making a difference. To me, it's a no-brainer, but it is about changing the paddock between your ears. It is about being conscious of all of those choices that you make in your life. And can we do this without chemicals? Yes, we can do it without. Yes, we can do it without chemicals. Yes, we can feed the world without chemicals. So I do feel, when I'm out there, that I'm producing food that is good for people, that is healthy for people, that has got as much in it that nature can naturally provide.
Rachel, yeah, you nailed it. The earth is like this system, and everything we do does have an impact, and it matters how one individual chooses to walk forward and step on the planet, whether it's gently or with care as a steward of the future, or just conscious without any consciousness whatsoever. And part of that, and I want to ask you about, all of us are born with dreams and ideas, and there are many young people who grow old never having achieved their dreams and the things that they loved as a child. And so you've done this. You've achieved dreams, and I'm sure there are many that you never went after, but some that you have. And so to a person listening, whether they're 15 years old or 35 and kicking ass in Wall Street, thinking they made it, what do you say to people? Like, what can they do, just to be confident to go after their dreams? Is there any kind of nugget of wisdom in there?
Seems like I've achieved my dreams. I mean, not really. I mean, I feel more fulfilled and more purposeful now, because I feel that whatever I do, I'm convinced it's the right thing to be doing. And and it's a worthwhile thing to be doing. It's contributing to, it's leaving a positive contribution rather than a negative contribution. And in the entertainment industry, I didn't think I was leaving a negative contribution particularly, but it was an incredibly frustrating and time-wasting occupation to be involved in. So much time of unemployment, so much frustration of trying to get projects up and running, and so much external things that you couldn't control, that were out of your control. So I wouldn't say I fulfilled my dreams in that space at all. I had a couple of great projects that, made me a reasonable amount of money early on, and that has sort of sustained me from then on. But moving to another country, being a migrant, that all carries enormous difficulties and struggles. And I would say that life is, and I'm somebody who's, I think, probably feels deeply, reacts oversensitively to things, and I've definitely had my struggles. And I think that there's no point believing that life isn't full of that. Of course it is that's part of life, and to believe that you're actually just going to be there to fulfill your dreams, no, in the end, you hope you go, there are little moments where you've had little miracles. But, you know, most of the time we're struggling. Most of the time, everybody's struggling. And to pretend otherwise, that there are some people out there who have this, you know, miracle life where they're not struggling is I think, really dangerous. And I think, you know, obviously our media, you know, never stops promoting these people who seem to have these sort of idealistic lives. And it's so dangerous and so it's so crushing for anybody else out there who is struggling day to day. And I think it's a comfort to know that everybody's struggling. You know, my life looks on the surface, and at the moment it's very good because, you know, I'm arrived at a place late on in life where I have been through my struggles, and I got to a place where I can wake up every day and feel purpose if I've just got a new bit of biodiversity in my paddock. And I don't have grand ideas. You know, I don't have grand dreams. My dreams are small, and they're very possible to attain.
Yeah.
You know, if I see a different kind of bird on my property, I go, that's as good as it gets.
Rachel's film is Standing on the Soilution, a feature documentary brought to you by Wild Bear Entertainment in association with Newtown Films. I will provide a link in the show notes to the teaser for Standing on the Soilution. It's slated for theatrical release in Australia in October of this year. Stay tuned for those of you in the United States, and elsewhere the theatrical event releases will be coming soon after. Thanks for visiting Tools for Nomads, a look into the lives and habits of fascinating and creative people like Rachel Ward. Tools for Nomads is brought to you by Top Drawer. At Top Drawer, nomadism isn't simply about being on the move. It's about loving and living life where the things we carry directly impact our productivity, our well-being, and even our identity. Top Drawer combines the quality and craftsmanship of our grandparents' generation with the drive for independence, function, and stylish sustainability. It all results in a collection of tools curated from around the world that help you do your best work wherever you are. Visit topdrawershop.com or visit one of their dozen-plus meticulously outfitted shops in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Chicago, Berkeley, Tokyo. topdrawershop.com. Thanks for visiting. See you next time on Tools for Nomads.